All right. Welcome everyone to a new topic in iOS. I'm recording this lecture and it will be posted in your BBLearn, and I will also post it on YouTube. Okay. So if you have any questions, you can wait until the end and then you can ask me questions. So what we're going to cover today, we're going to cover Introduction to UIKit. This is in your book, this is fundamental. Chapter in Unit 2, Chapter 2.7, all right? Lesson 2.7. What we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about the most common views available for us on iOS, and how I'll explain to you what are they, some of the basic attributes of each view, and when do we use them, all right? So let's go ahead and get in the book, talk about the common system views, talk about, for example, what a mobile screen looks like. And then we're going to talk about the different attributes about a particular view. And then we will discuss labels, image view, text view, scroll view, table view, toolbars, navigation bars, tab bars, controls, buttons, segmented controls, text fields, sliders, switches, date pickers, view controllers, and that's the last lab. Now there's a lot in here, and if you learn how to use all of them, it would require more than that's just this lesson. It requires a lot more work. So, but I'll explain them to you first, and then we're gonna have multiple lessons later on how to use each one of them. All right. So, if we open the keynotes, and let's talk about the introduction to UIKit. Okay, so if I start looking at this, in iOS, in the UIKit, almost all screens that you see on your display on your phone is made up of group of views laid out together to make what you see. All right. So in this screen we have, for example, we have. Let me see if I can get the mouse to show, because I don't like this. All right, so that way I can move the mouse and point at it. Okay, so what happens in here, in the screen, we have, if this was the final view, this assembled view, it's made up of a window, a tab bar view, a navigation view, and then you have actually a custom view which has a bunch of views on it. So typically these views are laid out in a hierarchy, all right? And then we're going to see this as we go along, and you're going to see this actually in the exercise at the end. So here are some of the common system views and their configuration. Each view that you have that you see on the screen, it has a frame. And this frame decides on the position of that view within another view, and the size of that view, which is basically a rectangular area. It has X and Y, and it has width and height. All right, so we call that frame. So that is the position and the size. Usually these are typically in a frame. All right. Then we have the alpha, which is transparency. You can see here alpha. Is it showing here? Yeah, do you see that? Alpha is 1, mean Alpha 1 means it's not transparent. The lower the number, you have between 0 and 1. So if you put 0.5, it's semi-transparent. If you put 0, it's fully transparent. So you can't see anything of it. You just see the background. The background color, you can set your background color. Initially, any view that you add to your screen, it comes with a white color, or you can change the color from the property inspector of a particular view. A tag is a way to identify a view on your screen. So you could have multiple views, but the way you identify these views, we can use tag numbers. So if you want to deal with, if you want to recognize what view that the user clicked on, this is one way to use it, by using the tag number. All right. Labels, as the name suggests, usually labels are used for displaying data, static data. We display things to the user that the user cannot change. All right. So in these type of views, they're used only for output. Now, there are some characteristics, some of the things that you need to be aware of regarding views. One of the things that you need to be familiar with is the number of lines. What it means that if your view, and we've seen that, and we did that before, is that if your label is small and cannot fit the entire text, then you would the text is clipped, and then you'll see dot 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 at the end. All right. So that if you can avoid that by increasing the number of lines, make your label size bigger, so that way you can fit more lines and you can see the entire text. Or you can change the font as well and still can fit within the text of the size of that label. All right. So you can change the alignment as well. Just like any other, like you're dealing with a document, you can change the font, you can change the alignment, you can change the number of lines. All right. So those are some of the common things that we deal with when we are working with labels. All right. Image views. Image view is not an image. It's a view that can display images. All right. So an image view, you can set the image by using the property here. It says you can select an image. As long as this image that you want to select exists in your project, and it can exist in an asset folder, or it just can exist in your folder, all right, in your project folder. So you can select the image you want, you can highlight it, you can change the scale of that image, and we're going to see examples when we talk about the next lab, when we talk about the aspect fill and other features with for the image view that can allow you to display the image and control how that image is being displayed. All right. A text view is another view. This view usually is a big view. That means it allows you to enter text. Unlike label, it allows you to enter text with multiple lines. These are great, for example, to write an email. If you want to write an email, you can use text view to write an email, right? So any time that you want to use a text, if you wanted to type not just simple line, like a paragraph, we use text view for it. With text view, there is a lot of features. When we start using it, I'll explain those features in details. But for example, things that you can change the fonts, the color, the layout. You can say, is it enable, not enable? It's selectable or not? Can you select text from it or not? Things like you can recognize a phone number, you can recognize a web link in your text view. By clicking on it, it'll actually open the link that is specified in your text view. All right. Again, where do we use this? Anytime you're writing a paragraph with multiple lines in it, and you can embed phone numbers, emails, all kind of stuff. All right. A scrolly view is another view. Think about it. When do we use a scrolly view? We use a scrolly view whenever we want to display things that cannot fit on the screen. So if we have things that are larger than the screen, we can use scroll view as an option to display that data. For example, if you wanted to zoom in and zoom out on an image, you can use a scroll view to do that. There are some features with the scroll view. You can specify these horizontal, this vertical line, scroll bars, horizontal scroll bar. You can say bounce when you scroll, bounce when you zoom, so it'll give you that animation, bouncing animation. All right. You can cancel on scroll, but there's a lot more setup that need to happen in the code whenever you're using scroll view, not just simply set it up here. All right. So scroll views, when do we use them? We use them when we have things to display larger than the screen size. All right. A table view is one of the greatest views that most of us use all the time. If you look at the setting app, you're using table view. If you're using the content app, you're using table view. If you are using the email, for example, inbox, you're using table view. So table views have great usage, and we will cover it. I'm not sure when we get to it, but it's one of the things that we will learn eventually. If you want to know more about this table view, it is not in the Swift fundamental book, it's in the data collection book. All right. And then with the table view, it comes in with a lot of built-in features for you. For example, the labels, the cells. Each table view has bunch of cells, so you can have cells. You can design the cells that you want, however you want them. But again, with table view, just having a table view on the screen is not enough. There's a lot more configuration and programming that need to happen in order to see things on the screen. A toolbars is like, as the name suggests, it's a tool at the bottom of your screen that has a bunch of buttons, and these buttons usually relate to the screen you're in. So for example, if I have a photo, I can share that photo. I can tag it as my favorite, or I can delete it. So your actions here, these are related to the screen you're in or the view you're in. So here we have, these things are called bar button items. Bar button items, and each bar button item can have a style, a custom style, or an image. You can have a text if you want, but it's just a regular button. You click on it, you can have action related to these bar button items. All right, that's a toolbar. Navigation bar is another very common view that we use a lot. It usually appears on top. If you are in settings, when you click on a setting, you go to if you want to go down one more level, for example, if you go to general from settings, now you can go back. This is, for example, sound and haptics. So you can, if you want to go back, you can go back that way. All right. So when you click on back, it takes you to the previous screen. Navigation bars have a title usually, and they usually have a back button item if you navigate to a lower level. They're great to use for hierarchies. So if you have a hierarchy of views, you navigate from the top to the bottom to the bottom to a lower level to another level. We use navigation bar for that. All right. So it has a title. You can put a title on it. The bar tent, you can leave it as is, but you can have the title color, the title fonts, and so forth. Okay. And you could have the latest standards is that you make your title large if it's possible, because you want people to be able to read it clearly. All right. That's navigation bar. There is a lesson on this when we get to it. I think it's in week 6 or 7. We'll talk about navigation bars. Tab bars are, remember when we talked about navigation styles last time, we talked about hierarchy, you know, like top-down hierarchy navigation, and then we have also flat navigation. The flat navigation is where you have access to all these different screens. So these tab bars, for example, it's like a flat navigation. So the way that you use tab bar is different than bar items, bar button, you know, tab bar. This is tab bar, the other one was toolbar. So it's different than toolbar because tab bars are used mainly to have segregated functions within your app. All right, a great example of that, your phone app. In your phone app, you have contact. So contact has nothing to do with recent calls. So in your phone app, you have contacts, you have recent calls, you have favorites, right? And so each tab gives you a specific function. So that's what tab bars are used, tab bar controllers. So in this case, each tab gives you different features in your application. All right. So today, travel today, news if you want to read news, and then you have following if you're following anybody. So this is an app that allow you to give you information, but each tab talks about different things. And typically, each tab is associated with another screen. So this tab is tied to another screen. This tab is tied to another screen. This tab is linked to another screen. All right. So here's your tab bar items. You can set the background. You can set the tint. Each one of these each tab bar item can have an image. You need to check the human interface guide for these images. You can actually set the title for each one of those. All right. So that's different than the navigation bar controller. The navigation controller, you go in a hierarchy manner, top, down. You start with the top level, then you go drill down into another level, drill down into another level, and you always have a back button to go take you back to the previous screen. With a tab bar controller, you can switch between screens easily by just simply clicking on these tab bar button items at the end. And again, each item usually is related to a particular function and a screen in your app. In addition to that, we have controls. Controls such are, the basic control is a button. A button is a very common control that exists in most UI interfaces in whatever technology they use. So in this case, buttons are used for actions. When you click on a button, you want to do something. So a button usually have some properties, the title of the button, the title, Here it says a button. You can change the color font, you can change the background color, and all kind of stuff with buttons. All right, but typically buttons are very, very important views, and they're used for actions in our apps. Right? Segmented controls. Segmented controls is a group of buttons. That means typically if I have choices, limited number of choices, means not 500 choices, but maybe in this case, a map is a good example. A map app. If you want to have a map or transit or satellite view, so you could have a segmented control, and each segment, you click on it, it's a button, it's an action that you can actually program the action related to it. Each segmented control button has an index. So it has this, for example, segments, there are 3 segments, 2 segments. If it is 2 segments, it's actually 0, 1, and 2, so it's 3. And then you can specify each segment. So segment 0 is going to be maps or first or whatever. And then you can do the next segment and then next segment. So you can specify which segment you're working with here. All right. So here, I'm sorry, I think it's only 2 segments. Okay. So it's 1 and 2, but the index start with 0 always. All right. Again, you use them for limited set of options. Text field is another great view that we use a lot in our apps. Anytime you want to enter data in your applications, what do we use? Either text view or text field. Text views are for paragraphs, but text fields for small amount of text. Name, password, username, first name, last name, whatever. Anytime you want to enter free text, you use text views. And you can control text views by displaying what keyboard is shown on your screen. So for example, if you look at here, all of these, in addition to the default stuff, you can have rounded style, you can have the alignments, you can change the font, but these are great ways to help your user use your text views. So for example, you can, this is just a default keyboard. You say keyboard type is default. If you click on it, you will have things like, is it a decimal? Is it a phone? Is it an email? Is it whatever? So you can select these different type of keyboards, and based on what you select here, when the user click on this, you will get different type of text field, different type of keyboard displayed on your screen. All right, any question on this? So that is your text field. Sliders. Sliders are good way to help your user, instead of typing a value, selecting a value and controlling what the user can enter, instead of doing all that validation yourself. So a segment control, slider, you can see the volume is an example of that. You can move it up or down. Same thing with the brightness, up and down. So those are the type of controls. These are the type of things where you can use this sliders for. For example, here you can, with the sliders, you can specify the default value. That means when you first run your application, where would be the slider? In this case, 0.5. So the slider will be in the middle. Why would it be in the middle? Because I said the minimum value here is 0 and the maximum value is 1. If I wanted to say from 1 to 10, I want to be able to the user to select from 1 to 10, then what do? Instead of minimum value 0, I can put 1, maximum value is 10, and now I need to change this to 5. So it will be in the middle of that slider. All right. A slider is like a button. When you change the value, it will trigger an action in your application. And usually to get the value of the slider, we use, instead of using .text, we use something called .value, and that will give us the value of that slider. A switch is on and off. You know, there's a lot of usage of this. Do you want, when you do a settings, for example, do you want your vibrate to ring or vibrate on ring, vibrate on silent? So anytime where you have on and off, we use the switches. Again, if you want to know if it is selected or not, we check in. Again, it's similar to the button. It will actually trigger an action, or you can use it as an outlet and get the value of it. All right. Date pickers. This is your calendar. Anytime you want the user to enter date, you can use date picker for it. And now this has changed a lot. It's not, you can view it as a button almost, and then you click on it and it displays the date for you, a short version of this, or you can display it like this. All right. With the date picker, you can select, you can specify what do you want to pick. Do you want to pick time, or do you want to pick date, or do you want to pick date and time? So you can configure it in a way to display whatever you want. So, and then you can say dates, you can use current date, the current date to start with. You can specify the minimum and the maximum date for validation. You can select the mode. Here you say the mode is date and time, or you can select date only, time only, and so forth, okay? Or time only. All right, so that's your date picker. Again, this can trigger an action as well. If there are views that we don't know or we haven't seen before, where do we go? We go to the developer, apple.com, and we go to the documentations, and we go to UIKit, and from there you can get all the views available for us. All right, we will do these exercises in a minute. Let me show you that link where it is. So if I go to developer, this is the interface builder guide. If you go to views, do you see that? Here are your views. Here are your different views that you want. For example, this is the image view. If you want to know more about the image view, it'll give you more description about the image view. You can see, for example, pages. Here's the text view. If you want to know more about text views, all right. So all your views in controls, for example, here are my controls. Here's my button. So you can see these different buttons. Labels, here's my labels. Okay. Here are my pickers. If I want to see the date pickers, or this is not date picker. Okay, this is just picker. But you can see as well date and time picker. All right. And here's my slider. And I'll show you talk to you and explain to you about these different views. So if you are exposed to another view that you haven't seen before, you come to this website, to this link, and then you can explore more about these controls, okay? These views. And I think you can go to developer, Apple developers, documentation, and then you should go to UIKit. It was there. If you go to UIKit, that's what we're studying. And then you can user interface, you can view views and controls. And then here's will give you more information about each view as well. All right. So that's on Apple, developer Apple documentations, views and controls. All right, we're done for this part. Obviously, there's a lot to learn here. We're not going to do all of that today. In the next example, I'll explain to you how to display data, the next part. But for today, what we want to do, the next part, is I want you to follow this instruction, the lab, learn about some of the most common used interface elements in UIKit. Where can you find them? Here is the lesson. Identify different views, control in some of the common system apps, iOS. Look through the setting, context, the news, calendar, and then try to identify the things that we've learned. So for example, let's take a look at one. In your Xcode, we have a simulator, right? So if when you run your app, you have a simulator. If I already have it running, here's my simulator. Yeah, it doesn't want to show me the simulator, but let's see if it will show me the simulator. Anyway, let's run the app so it will show us a simulator. So here is my simulator. You can do that as on your phone as well if you want. But this is an easy way, right? So if I close this simulator, now if we open, for example, the setting app, here's my setting app. What do you see here on top? Do you recognize any of the things that we talked about here? Do we have labels? So maybe this is a label, all right? Maybe these are labels, okay? But these are other than the labels. What do you see here? This is on top, for example, this is your navigation bar. This is your navigation controller, all right? If I click on one of these are cells in the table, and this is a table view. So this is a table view. How do I know it's a table view? It looks like basically a list of things. So anytime you have a list of things in this fashion, it's most likely it's a table view. When I click on one of those, it took me to the next screen. And notice the next screen is what? You see that back button. So again, to go to general, I had to go to setting first, and then I went to general. So this is what? This is a navigation controller that, again, to the way when do we use it? We use it in a hierarchy type of application. So where we have the screens laid out in a hierarchy, so we can use navigation bar for it. So for example, you can click on the about, and all these are labels. Yes, type labels, if you think about them, because you can't enter anything, you can't change them. Again, it looks like a table. How do I know if it's a table? Because you go up and down, and it looks like we have cells, so it's another table. All right, so you can add, you can select, again, this is the keyboard. This is, what is this? A label. What are these? What are those? Switches, right? So you can see those are switches, and then you can switch switches, enable and disable. Again, this is a label here. So if we go back to another application, if we open, for example, maps, okay? So notice I have a map, I have a button here, and then you can specify, again, we don't have segmented control. I wanted to show you segmented control, but it's not showing here, okay? What is this, do you think? Where I can enter some information, like a text field, right? It's a text field, but this is search box, search text, okay? Okay, so if we go back home and let's take a look at photos, for example. Now this is, you haven't studied this, but this is called collection view, all right? What about the bottom here? What are these? Yeah, what do we call this kind of navigation here at the bottom?
Tab view.
Tab bar
Tab button.
controller. Yeah, tab bar controller. And each one of those is tab bar item, okay? So notice each one of those is separate functionality. Each one of these is separate, has different functions. So, and what about if we open one of these images? What about this at the bottom here? What do we call those?
Toolbar.
Toolbar, right? And then these actions, the toolbar items related to the image that we are working with, all right? So if I click on share, I'm sharing this image, right? If I delete, I'm deleting this image, all right? If I want to zoom, notice I can zoom now. I can, you know, what do you think I'm doing here? Maybe it is an image view, but you can move it around, maybe image view and scroll view at the same time, yeah? Okay, so do you get the idea? So in the end of that book, this lab, it'll ask you to write a paragraph. We're gonna do that next time. It says create a pages file, which is basically Microsoft. It's like a document. Create a new page document 2.7 UIKit and save it in your project folder. Add section header for 6 views. So you will put section header, and then you'll talk about label, image view, text field, view table, and so forth. Add section header 5 controls button also. What you need to do, you take screenshots of the app, this app, the setting app, and put examples you found in your app, in the simulator app, in that document. So if you find a label, say, oh, here's a label. If you find an image view, oh, here's an image view example of an image view. All right. So that's what you're gonna do next time. All right. I'm gonna stop recording, and I'm gonna give you a break, and then ask any questions after the break, and then we'll continue with displaying data. Okay.